Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Grajdek. I'm Dr. Martha Grajdek. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. In a world where companies compete with rivals potentially across an entire globe, it's important that organizations be in the know, as in understanding ongoing or potential issues, the kinds of issues and problems that could cost them their edge or cost them their profitability. This is where employees come in. Employees who are open and honest and inform their employer of any current or potential issues can be the ones to save the day. However, if employees don't feel safe enough to bring up current or potential issues, perhaps it's for the fear of being singled out or some kind of retaliation, the organization misses out on an opportunity to correct ongoing or future problems. It's no secret that competition can be fierce amongst companies and sometimes even amongst industries. As such, many managers wish for the kind of feedback from employees that can potentially save the day. Honest and open communication can be on top of a manager's wish list if that allows him or her to get ahead of a problem or to address one that is currently happening, but they may not even know about it. What we have here is, on one hand, a manager who wants to be in the know, a manager who wishes or wants to rely on honest and open feedback from employees. On the other side of that coin is the employee who may or may not feel safe enough to share information that could potentially save the day. And while on the surface it may seem like an easy decision, if an employee sees something wrong or sees a potential problem, it should not be a big deal to speak up, to let someone know about what's happening. But the reality can be very different. If the organization's culture is not one that promotes speaking up, that protects those who speak up, and that addresses issues that are brought up, employees may have little or no reason of risking their own peace and safety for the sake of the organization. When it comes to the psychology of speaking up, especially at the workplace, many people may feel guarded. Even people who feel free and safe to speak up about other things outside of the workplace may choose not to say anything when it comes to the workplace, simply because having a stable and steady source of income outweighs any other risk-taking. This can go beyond simply identifying what is right and what is wrong, what is the right thing to do. It goes beyond bravery. When it comes to the workplace, we're also looking at psychological safety. Bravery can get someone to speak up, to say something about an issue that is current or a potential issue. But once that is done, The employee then has to potentially deal with anything that comes at them as a result. This is where psychological safety comes into play, and that can outweigh the idea of bravery. You may feel brave in the moment, but if you perceive the danger of having to pay for it down the road and in a long-term capacity, bravery may not be the best choice in your estimate of the situation. It's much easier for someone outside of a situation to speak up and say, if that were me, it would have been easy to make the decision to say something. But unless you are in that position where you are potentially risking a paycheck or risking a peaceful workplace existence, the decision may be a lot more difficult than it seems. This is why it's so important for employers to create the kind of culture that not only encourages for people to speak up without the fear of retaliation or retribution, but also creates and maintains multiple channels, multiple options, multiple ways for people to share their concerns. And while sometimes HR may serve a role in certain situations, that's not always enough. That's not always the best avenue for an employee to voice a concern. This is why multiple options should always be available to employees. An employee should be able to report an issue or a potential issue to his or her manager. But sometimes the manager may be the problem, or perhaps the manager is too close to the problem, in which case an employee may need to skip a level and report an issue to someone else other than their immediate manager or supervisor. For many, that very idea sends chills down their spine because they may be perceived as overstepping their boundaries, going above their manager's head, which can sometimes backfire. As you can see, it's not difficult to understand the importance of safety when speaking up and having multiple ways of reporting issues or potential issues. Anonymous reporting absolutely must be an option. There are some things that will simply not be reported unless employees can do so anonymously. And the anonymity of the individual reporting the problem must be true anonymity, not something that can be traced back to a person. Anonymous reporting should not rely on a person's email that can be traced back to them or handwriting that can be recognized. Another way to make it easier for employees to report existing or potential problems could be through an impartial third party. That could be a person within the company or outside of the organization. This must be someone who truly is impartial and is able to work within the designated parameters of anonymity and protection for those who report problems. As you can see, there are a number of different ways in which an employer can make it possible for employees to report problems or potential problems, for them to speak up in a way that feels safe for them and in a way that will protect them. Allowing employees to have multiple ways of reporting issues is only the beginning of what needs to happen within an organization. An organization must make sure that anonymity is protected if those are the wishes of the reporting individual. There should also be a way of defining a response time. That doesn't necessarily mean responding to the reporting individual, but responding in the way of addressing the issue or potential issue. Even if employees have multiple ways of voicing their concerns, but never see anything change or improve as a result of their reporting, they will lose any motivation they may have had to report things to the employer. This is because their own risk-taking, the act of reporting issues or potential issues, then appears to fall on deaf ears. If the organization is perceived as insincere in what they say about wanting to know about problems or potential problems, individuals will no longer have the motivation to take their time and energy to report any issues. So once again, reporting or having ways to report, to voice your concerns as an employee is only the beginning of the entire process. Once an employee reports an issue or a potential issue and is given some kind of timeline of when the issue would be examined and addressed and potentially fixed, there also should be some way for employee to give feedback regarding how the organization did. If an employee provides feedback, reports an issue of some sort, and the employer gives a timeline during which they will address the issue, but the issue isn't fixed or isn't fixed properly, the employee will then lose confidence or lose faith in the organization to fix issues accordingly. It may come across as incompetence or simply having paid no real attention to what the employee was conveying to the organization. So once again, there must be multiple channels, multiple options of how an employee would report a problem or a potential problem. They must have some kind of a timeline of when they can expect the issue to be addressed, when corrections or fixes should be visible, and they also need to be able to provide feedback in terms of how well the company responded to that individual employee's effort of reporting a problem. Unfortunately, far too many organizations do not complete all of these steps, and this is when people become unmotivated to speak up. So creating the right kind of environment, the right kind of culture where people will be invited to share what they know in an attempt to improve the company and its overall health, which will then lead to improved employee experiences, depends on this process being complete. This requires transparency and commitment on the organization's part. The employee is already committing by reporting an issue or a potential issue, by voicing a concern, by putting themselves on the line or sticking out their own neck, whatever their perception may be. This means that the company absolutely must match and exceed the employee in their own efforts. Feedback should never result in any kind of retaliation, animosity, or punishment of any kind. Nothing will derail the process faster. Having a system in place, having best practices to which to adhere as an organization is a good, solid start. But beyond that, Best practices should also include monthly check-ins where leadership and management of the organization check in with employees and remind employees to be aware and to be on the lookout for any potential issues. After all, the health of the organization affects everyone, employee and employer alike. It's a good idea to have either monthly meetings, monthly memos, or some form of monthly reminders encouraging people to be aware of what's going on around them and to spot issues as they come up. This makes sense because those people who are doing the work are more likely to notice small things that have the potential of becoming more serious problems. You might be surprised how many people do not report anything simply because nobody else asked them about it. As with all best practices, policies, and procedures, understanding how well the design works requires keeping track of what's going on and how well things are going. Understanding how often problems are reported, what kind of problems are reported, can be an eye-opener to potential bigger issues within the organization. Knowing how quickly and how well or how effectively the company responded is also incredibly telling in terms of the company's own performance. And understanding employee satisfaction regarding the employer's response is a great piece of information and an opportunity for employer to improve processes, systems, and their own responses. If your organization does not have a history of encouraging employees to speak up, if there are no systems or best practices or policies in place, you have to start from scratch. This is where a one-page call to action type of memo can come in handy. A simple explanation to employees why their feedback and participation can be absolutely critical for the company, its health, and the employee workplace experience in general. This is a document that should explain to the employees how they can report their concerns or issues that they see around them. Make sure that there are multiple ways of reporting available to employees and that at least one of them is a way for employees to speak up anonymously. Make it clear how quickly the company will respond to employee concerns and offer a way of following up regarding employee satisfaction if that is indeed what the employee chooses as part of their experience. For those employees who may choose to report something anonymously, they may not want to be contacted about their experience later. That would negate the entire experience of anonymity. And remember, whatever systems you put in place, they should never be written in stone. These are systems and practices that should be reviewed, assessed, and adjusted as needed. Ongoing learning and ongoing improvement is always a good idea when success is one of the goals. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. In a world of fierce competitions, many organizations would benefit from honest and open feedback from within their own organization. feedback from their employees. But unfortunately, many employees either have no channels or means of reporting issues or potential issues, or they choose not to use their voice for the fear of some kind of retaliation, regardless how small the retaliation may be. It may be enough to silence an individual and prevent them from speaking up. It's important to understand the psychology of using one's voice, what bravery means in terms of psychological safety, and the perception of potential retaliation. It is up to the organization and its leadership and management to create the kind of organizational culture that has processes and practices in place which allow for free expression for all employees. But having a way to report a problem is only the beginning. It's important that the organization has in place a plan of how long it will take for the issue to be addressed and resolved. Beyond that, it's also important that employees have an opportunity of letting the company know how well it did once the issue was reported to them. Psychological safety and transparency go hand in hand. Whether a company is creating new systems and new best practices, or they're simply improving on an existing structure, it's important to remember that ongoing learning and improvement absolutely must be part of the process. As such, the organization must continue to assess how they are doing so that they can make improvements as necessary. As the week unfolds, I encourage everyone to consider whether or not their organization has the proper channels, the proper practices for individuals to voice their concerns. Are there multiple channels or multiple ways of sharing information with the employer? What happens once information is shared? Can an employee honestly expect for something to happen as a result, for a change, an improvement to take place? This is something that affects the entire organization, and therefore it's something that concerns everyone within the organization, regardless of their position or level of responsibilities. This is why I encourage everyone to consider how individuals can voice their concerns and point out any issues or potential issues as a way of building a strong and healthy organization. For those of you who experience this podcast in an audio-only version, I encourage you to check out my YouTube channel, Stress Free with Dr. G, where you can find the video version of the podcast. Once you're there, check out some of the other videos. They focus on stress management. Stress Free with Dr. G is found on YouTube, and the link for that is in the description below. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you here again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.